Hello aspirants, welcome to Daily UPSC Current Affairs Revision Series by Insights IAS. In today's session, we'll cover the E-Samudra Platform, the Payment and Settlement Systems Act 2007, the EVEREST rocket engine, the Enforcement Directorate, and the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Exercise 2026. And in mapping, we'll explore Amboseli National Park. So, without any further delay, let's get started. Let's begin with the genuinely convenient digital initiative for India's seafarers, the E-Samudra Platform. Here's the context. The Union Minister for Ports, Shipping and Waterways launched E-Samudra, an integrated digital portal aimed at accelerating the digital transformation of India's maritime administration. So, what exactly is E-Samudra? It's a comprehensive, single-window, digital-first and faceless portal designed to digitize and streamline administrative workflows across India's maritime sector. It integrates services for seafarers, shipping companies, recruitment agencies, training institutes, and port authorities, all under one unified digital framework. It's led by the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways and implemented by the Directorate General of Maritime Administration, DGMA. And here's an important strategic context worth remembering. It's aligned with the goals of Maritime India Vision 2030 and Maritime Amrit Kal Vision 2047. Its aim is to transition maritime governance from a paper-based office model to a transparent, predictable digital ecosystem, enhancing ease of living for Indian seafarers and ease of doing business for maritime businesses. Now, let's go through the key features of this platform. There's single-window digital governance, consolidating administrative workflows, online fee payments, real-time application tracking, and digital certificate issuance into a single paperless portal. There's the Digital Seafarers Employment Agreement, DSEA, introducing verifiable digital employment agreements to safeguard contractual entitlements, transparent wages, and labor standards for crew members, a genuinely important protection layer for seafarers. There's also a real-time seafarer tracking dashboard, integrating with tracking tools to monitor the deployment, safety, location, and welfare of Indian seafarers worldwide. Regardless of vessel flags, notice how this connects directly to the flag-neutral approach we've seen in earlier maritime safety initiatives. There's 24/7 integrated grievance redressal called E-Navik, connecting seafarers directly with emergency response, medical help, and grievance resolution channels, accessible on board or ashore. There's remote maritime access too, built as a digital-first and faceless platform, allowing active seafarers deployed on high seas vessels to access official services smoothly, even from the middle of the ocean. And there's a genuine focus on inclusion and mental health, complementing welfare programs like Sagar Mein Samman, expanding opportunities for women seafarers, and Sagar Mein Yog, promoting mental and physical well-being. On significance, this platform provides scalable digital infrastructure for India's expanding seafarer workforce, now over 3.23 lakhs strong. And it reduces compliance delays and administrative costs for shipping companies, RPSLs, and maritime training institutes. So, to quickly recap, E-Samudra, launched by Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways and implemented by DGMA, digitizes India's maritime governance, aligned with Maritime India Vision 2030 and Maritime Amrit Kal Vision 2047. Remember its Digital Seafarers Employment Agreement, DSEA, its 24/7 grievance redressal through E-Navik, and that it serves India's seafarer workforce of over 3.23 lakh people. Now, let's move to a genuinely important clarification on your everyday digital payments, the Payment and Settlement Systems Act 2007. The context is that the central government clarified that everyday person-to-person P2P and general merchant UPI transactions will remain completely free for citizens, and this statement follows public concerns over proposed amendments to Section 10A of the Payment and Settlement Systems Act, PSS Act 2007 via the Taxation and Other Laws Amendment Bill 2026. Now, if you use UPI daily like most of us do, this clarification genuinely matters. So, what exactly is the PSS Act 2007? It's the primary legislative framework governing and regulating all electronic, digital, and traditional payment and settlement systems operating within India. It was assented to in December 2007 and formally came into force on the 12th of August 2008. Its aim is to establish a sound legal framework for the regulation, supervision, netting, and final settlement of payment systems in India, designating the Reserve Bank of India (RBI), assisted by the Payments Regulatory Board (PRB) as the statutory supervisory authority. Now, let's go through the key features of this act. There's statutory designation of RBI, designating the RBI as the sole authority to regulate, license, inspect, and issue directions to all payment system operators (PSOs) in the country. There's mandatory authorization, prohibiting any entity, domestic or foreign, from commencing or operating a payment system, including card networks, PPI wallets, and money transfers, without explicit prior authorization from the RBI. There's also legal recognition of netting and settlement finality, ensuring that gross or net financial settlements become final and irrevocable once determined. It explicitly protects settled transactions and collateral appropriations from being unwound even if a participating entity becomes insolvent, a genuinely important safeguard for market confidence. There are penalties for dishonor of electronic fund transfers, EFT. Section 25 makes the dishonor of electronic fund transfer instructions due to insufficient funds a punishable criminal offense, providing legal parity with check bouncing cases under the Negotiable Instruments Act 1881. There are standards and on-site inspection powers, granting the RBI broad statutory powers to lay down technical standards, audit computer systems, call for operational returns, and conduct on-site inspections of PSOs in India or abroad. And there's a dispute resolution mechanism establishing a structured adjudication framework for resolving disputes between system participants, between participants and system providers, or involving the RBI itself. Now let's understand the recent proposed amendment for UPI in 2026, because this is exactly what today's context is about. There's an amendment to Section 10A proposed via the Taxation and Other Laws Amendment Bill 2026, modifying Section 10A of the PSS Act. There's an enabling provision for merchant discount rate (MDR), replacing rigid prohibition mechanisms to create an enabling statutory framework instead. Once passed, it empowers the UPI and Services Steering Committee, headed by the National Payments Corporation of India (NPCI), to determine nominal, threshold-based MDR if necessary in the future. Now, here's exactly the reassurance worth remembering: the protections retained. On being free for citizens, P2P transactions and everyday consumer merchant payments remain 100% free, with zero charges for citizens. That's the core clarification behind today's context. And on capped and targeted MDR, any future fee structure will apply only to specified large merchant transactions above a high threshold, levied at nominal rates, significantly lower than standard credit or debit card charges. So, to quickly recap, the PSS Act 2007, in force since the 12th of August 2008, designates the RBI as the sole regulator of payment systems in India, with Section 25 criminalizing EFT dishonor like check bouncing. Remember, the 2026 amendment to Section 10A creates an enabling framework for MDR, but everyday P2P and consumer UPI transactions remain completely free. Any future fee applies only to large merchants above a high threshold. Now let's move to a genuinely exciting Indian space technology milestone, the EVEREST rocket engine. The context is that Bengaluru-based space startup Astrobase Space Technologies unveiled EVEREST, India's first privately built 800 kilonewton full-flow staged combustion FFSC LOX methane rocket engine. Now that's a genuinely impressive mouthful of technical terms, so let's break it down together step by step. So What exactly is EVEREST? It's an indigenous, high-thrust, 80-ton class or 800 kilonewton liquid propellant rocket engine that utilizes liquid oxygen as the oxidizer and liquid methane as the fuel, a combination genuinely known as methalox. It's built using advanced metal 3D printing technologies, and it's specifically designed for next-generation reusable medium-lift launch vehicles. It was developed by Astrobase Space Technologies, founded in 2024, by former ISRO scientist Devkumar Thammisetti and entrepreneur Neeraj Khandelwal, a genuinely impressive founding team combining space agency experience with entrepreneurship. It's supported under the Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center's InSpace Technology Adoption Fund. Its aim is to provide high-efficiency, reliable, and clean-burning propulsion for indigenous reusable launch vehicles, unlocking medium-lift payloads of up to 30 tons to low Earth orbit (LEO), while enabling rapid launch turnaround times. Now, let's understand how it actually works. And this mechanism is genuinely clever, so let's slow down. There are dual pre-burners. Unlike conventional cycles, the engine routes 100% of both fuel and oxidizer through two separate pre-burners. There's turbopump powering. A fuel-rich pre-burner powers the fuel pump, while an oxidizer-rich pre-burner drives the liquid oxygen pump. And there's zero waste efficiency. The hot gases exiting both pre-burners are fed directly back into the main combustion chamber. No propellant is dumped into the atmosphere, ensuring maximum utilization and lower turbomachinery thermal stress. That's genuinely the defining feature of full-flow staged combustion. Absolutely nothing is wasted. Now, coming to the key features of EVEREST. It has high thrust and specific impulse, delivering a maximum thrust of 800 kilonewton or 80 tons with an exceptional specific impulse, approximately 340 seconds, translating to superior fuel efficiency. It uses clean-burning methalox propellant, and here's exactly why that matters. Utilizing LOX and methane prevents soot buildup, called coking, inside turbopumps and combustion chambers, greatly simplifying post-flight inspection and refurbishment. Genuinely important for a reusable engine that needs to be quickly turned around for its next flight. It has wide throttle control, featuring a dynamic throttling range from 50% to 110%, an indispensable capability for controlling descent speeds during vertical rocket landings and recovery operations. It uses additive manufacturing, 3D printing, with components built using India's largest industrial metal, 3D printers, in Bengaluru, enabling faster manufacturing cycles and complex internal cooling channels. And it has a robust testing roadmap, with fully integrated hot fire testing slated to begin at Astrobase's private 21.5-acre test site in Anantapur, Andhra Pradesh, with plans to build and test roughly 20 engines prior to its inaugural orbital flight target. On significance, this joins a genuinely select group of companies developing high-thrust FFSC engines, with SpaceX's Raptor currently the only operational example. That's a striking peer group to be in. And it advances reusable methalox rockets, lowering launch costs and enhancing India's competitiveness in the global space market. So, to quickly recap, EVEREST is India's first privately built full-flow staged combustion LOX methane rocket engine developed by Astrobase Space Technologies, delivering 800 kilonewton of thrust. Remember, its dual pre-burner design ensures zero propellant waste. Its throttle range of 50% to 110% supports vertical landing, and it joins SpaceX's Raptor as one of the very few operational FFSC engines worldwide. Now, let's move to an important institutional topic in governance, the Enforcement Directorate ED. The context is that the Appointments Committee of the Cabinet ACC approved a one-year extension for Rahul Navin as Director of the Enforcement Directorate. So what exactly is the ED? It's a multidisciplinary financial investigation agency under the Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. It's mandated to investigate economic crimes, financial frauds, money laundering, and foreign exchange law violations. Let's understand when it was established. It was established on the 1st of May 1956. And here's an interesting naming detail. It was originally set up as an enforcement unit within the Department of Economic Affairs before being renamed the Enforcement Directorate in 1957. Now, let's go through its history and administrative evolution, because this is genuinely dense, so let's slow down carefully. In 1956, it was formed under the Department of Economic Affairs to handle exchange control law violations under the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, 1947, FERA 47. In 1960, administrative control was transferred from the Department of Economic Affairs to the Department of Revenue. Between 1973 and 1977, it was briefly placed under the Department of Personnel and Administrative Reforms before returning to the Department of Revenue. Now, let's understand its statutory evolution, because this genuinely traces the ED's growing legal powers over time. It replaced FERA 1973 with the Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999 FEMA, effective from the 1st of June 2000. It began enforcing the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002 PMLA, effective from the 1st of July 2005. And it was entrusted with the Fugitive Economic Offenders Act 2018 FEOA, effective from the 21st of April 2018. Notice that pattern: 3 progressively stronger laws, each expanding the ED's investigative reach. Now, let's understand its governance and appointment structure. It's headed by the Director of Enforcement, typically an officer of the rank of Additional Secretary or Special Secretary to the Government of India, drawn from the Indian Revenue Service (IRS) or Indian Police Service (IPS). The appointment authority rests with the central government on the recommendation of a committee chaired by the Central Vigilance Commissioner (CVC). And on tenure rules, this is genuinely important. The director is granted an initial fixed tenure of 2 years, which can be extended for up to 3 one-year terms, up to a maximum total of 5 years. Under statutory amendments, exactly the kind of extension we are seeing in today's context. Now, let's go through the key functions of the ED. It investigates money laundering under PMLA, identifying, attaching, and confiscating assets derived from scheduled criminal activities, proceeds of crime, and prosecuting offenders in special PMLA courts. It handles restitution of misappropriated funds using PMLA provisions to attach and restitute attached properties and assets back to rightful victims, banks, and defrauded investors. It also adjudicates foreign exchange violations under FEMA, investigating non-compliance with foreign exchange regulations, trade misinvoicing, illegal hawala transactions, and imposing civil penalties. It takes action against fugitive economic offenders under FEOA, confiscating domestic and overseas properties of economic offenders who flee India to evade criminal prosecution. And it engages in international cooperation and asset recovery, coordinating with overseas intelligence units and international bodies such as FATF and Interpol to track cross-border illicit financial flows and execute letters rogatory (LRs). So, to quickly recap, the Enforcement Directorate, established in 1956 under the Department of Revenue, gained progressively stronger powers through FEMA in 2000, PMLA in 2005, and FEOA in 2018. Remember the director's tenure structure: an initial 2 years, extendable up to a maximum of 5 years total, and its appointment through a committee chaired by the CVC. Now, let's move to a genuinely important bilateral defense exercise, the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Exercise 2026. The context is that the 8th edition of the Indian Navy-US Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal (EOD) Exercise 2026 is scheduled to take place at the Southern Naval Command in Kochi, Kerala. So what exactly is this exercise? It's a specialized bilateral military training exercise focused on underwater salvage, bomb disposal, and explosive ordnance neutralization. And here's an important historical detail. It forms part of the Joint Salvage and EOD series, historically conducted under the Salvex banner, initiated by both navies back in 2005. On nations involved, from India, specialist diving and EOD teams from the Indian Navy, hosted at Southern Naval Command, Kochi, and from the United States, specialist diving and EOD technicians from the US Navy. Its aim is to enhance operational interoperability, deepen professional cooperation, and build tactical synergy between the specialist diving and explosive ordnance disposal units of both navies. Now, let's go through the key features of this exercise. There are subject matter expert exchanges, SMEEs, involving structured technical discussions where specialists share contemporary EOD methodologies, operational concepts, and safety protocols. There's hands-on cross-training, joint training modules where divers and technicians work side by side to understand each other's equipment, tactics, and operational philosophies. There are also equipment demonstrations showcasing emerging technologies, cutting-edge underwater detection tools, robotic disposal units, and modern explosive handling equipment. There are scenario-based practical drills featuring realistic combat and peacetime emergency simulations, including underwater mine disposal, unexploded ordnance, UXO, handling, and marine salvage operations. And here's a genuinely nice milestone worth holding on to. This marks the 8th historical edition of steady evolution in joint salvage and EOD operations between India and the US since 2005. That's 2 decades of continuous cooperation. On significance, this exercise strengthens joint responses to underwater threats, mine clearance, maritime terrorism, and salvage operations. And it advances strategic maritime cooperation, supporting Indo-Pacific security and freedom of navigation. So, to quickly recap, the 8th India-US Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal Exercise, held at Southern Naval Command, Kochi, traces back to the Salvex series that began in 2005. Remember, its focus on underwater mine disposal and UXO handling, and its broader significance for Indo-Pacific maritime security and freedom of navigation. Finally, let's turn to today's mapping topic. And this one's tied to a genuinely troubling wildlife mystery from Kenya, Amboseli National Park. The context is that in Kenya's Amboseli National Park ecosystem, a mystery unfolded following the sudden deaths of 15 to 16 African elephants within a single month, and the Kenya Wildlife Service, KWS, launched an investigation after preliminary tests detected cyanide poisoning, likely linked to agrochemicals from nearby farms. So, what exactly is Amboseli National Park? Formerly the Maasai Amboseli Game Reserve, it's one of Kenya's most famous and ecologically significant national parks. Renowned as the land of giants, it's internationally celebrated for harboring large herds of free-ranging African elephants, set against the genuinely stunning backdrop of Mount Kilimanjaro. On its location, it's situated in Kajiado County, southern Kenya, abutting the border with Tanzania. On its drainage and basin, it protects a dried-up Pleistocene lake basin within a semi-arid savanna ecosystem. Now, let's understand its history and conservation status. On its establishment, it was originally designated as a game reserve for the Maasai people, and it was gazetted as a national park in 1974 to protect its core swamps and wildlife corridors. On its UNESCO Biosphere Reserve status, it was designated as a UNESCO Man and Biosphere Reserve in 1991 due to the historical coexistence of the indigenous Maasai pastoralists, their livestock, and wildlife, a genuinely rare example of humans and wildlife sharing the same protected landscape for generations. Now, let's go through its key geographical and ecological features. On core size and landscape boundaries, it covers a core area of 392 square kilometers at the center of a vast 8,000 square kilometer cross-border ecosystem spanning the Kenya-Tanzania border. On the Mount Kilimanjaro drainage system, although located in a rain-shadow, semi-arid plain, the park features permanent freshwater swamps and sulfur springs. fed by underground runoff from Mount Kilimanjaro and the Kulu Hills. Genuinely fascinating that this dry plain sustains permanent wetlands thanks to underground water from a distant mountain. On rich biodiversity, it's home to over 1,600 to 1,800 elephants, along with large carnivores, lions, leopards, cheetahs, and spotted hyenas, and extensive herbivore herds, buffaloes, zebras, wildebeests, and impalas. It's also an important bird area, IBA, hosting over 400 bird species, including 47 raptor species and endangered species like the Malagasy pond heron. And there are landscape corridors and community conservancies relying on community-owned group ranches such as Kimana, Kuku, and Olgulului that form vital migration corridors connecting Amboseli to Tsavo-West National Park and Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, let's understand the implications of this recent elephant die-off. Dead elephants showed paralysis, while post-mortems detected cyanide and crop remains, suggesting crop raiding or retaliatory poisoning, essentially. Elephants raiding farms for food may have consumed crops deliberately laced with poison. And this incident underscores rising conflict from agricultural expansion, prompting calls to strengthen pesticide regulation and enforcement. A genuinely sobering reminder of how human-wildlife conflict continues to threaten even iconic, well-protected species like Amboseli's elephants. So, to quickly recap, Amboseli National Park in Kenya, gazetted in 1974 and a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve since 1991, is home to 1,600 to 1,800 elephants set against Mount Kilimanjaro. Remember, its core area of 392 square kilometers sits within a much larger 8,000 square kilometer cross-border ecosystem. And the recent cyanide poisoning deaths of 15 to 16 elephants point to rising human-wildlife conflict from agricultural expansion. And that brings us to the end of today's session. In today's session, we covered the E-Samudra Platform from GS Paper 3, Economy and Governance, the Payment and Settlement Systems Act, 2007 from GS Paper 3, Economy, the EVEREST rocket engine from GS Paper 3, Science and Technology, the Enforcement Directorate from GS Paper 2, Polity and Governance, the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Exercise 2026 from GS Paper 3, Defense and Security, and Amboseli National Park under Mapping. For the complete current affairs article and today's practice MCQs, visit insightsonindia.com using the link given in the description. Also, subscribe to the Insights IAS YouTube channel and join our official Telegram group for regular UPSC-related updates and learning resources. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again in the next session.